This is the Franchise QB Podcast, where we empower entrepreneurs to win big in franchising. We huddle up weekly to educate our audience about the most successful small business model ever created, franchising.
Joining us in the huddle today is Spencer Sabatasso, VP of Franchise Development with the Red Chickz. Welcome to the show, Spencer.
Thanks, Mike. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. Thanks for joining me. So you've been in the restaurant and hospitality industry for 30 plus years. You hold a BA in Culinary Arts and a BS in Hospitality Management from the Culinary Institute of America, very prestigious institution, as well as certifications in insurance, real estate, and sales. You specialize in identifying and growing concepts, turning them into brands and growing them across the country and overseas. Your mission is to help businesses grow and expand their footprint and brand awareness while delivering exceptional customer service and delicious products. So tell us a little bit about your background, Spencer, and how did you get into franchise sales and development?
Well, I'd been in this restaurant business for years and years, owned and operated a number of restaurants. And then in 2002 or three, got out of a partnership with the group out here in Southern California and just kind of was, bouncing around, figuring out what my next move was going to be. And I decided that at one moment I said, I'm done with the day-to-day operations of running a restaurant. I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I was like, well, what the heck am I going to do now? I have all my educations in the restaurant industry. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, what am I going to do? I literally did, financial services, drug and alcohol treatment, got my real estate license, insurance license. I've got all this stuff now. And I was like, bouncing around. I was like, I don't like any of it. I really love the restaurant industry, but how can I figure out how to be in that space without having 700 employees and restaurant? So a friend of mine who owned FranSmart, Dan Rowe, had been after me for years he's like, you should do franchise sales and development. And so finally I reached out to him and I said, yeah, what does that look like? And we started a dialogue and I started working with those guys, and I knew, and he knew, that I was only going to be there temporarily. And I really just wanted to learn kind of the legal side of it and all the stuff they look at, for prospective franchisees. And then from that, I kind of, pivoted, and I worked for them for about a year and a half or so, and kind of learned what to do, things to not do. And then I was recruited by a brand to come in and be their VP of development. And I think in our first year of development, I think we put like 300 stores in development or something. And I just, realized that they didn't have a lot of the boxes checked that should be checked before you start franchising. And they were supposed to do a lot of things and they didn't do it. And so inevitably I was like, this doesn't feel right. I've been on both sides of being a franchisor and a franchisee. And I pivoted out of that relationship. And I was always on the look for brands I really, really like. I've got a lot of relationships in the restaurant industry. And I was actually introduced to the Red Chickz from the CEO of this big, huge cookie brand. And I kind of just went up to check it out just to see what it was.
Right.
He was thinking about doing something with them. And I was looking at like the small footprint. The food was really good. It was a cute environment. And I told him, I said, yeah, you should do it. I think it's great. I went off and I was doing what I was doing. And I heard about an opening in Carlsbad, California. I knew it was a franchisee store. And so I happened to be down there. And so I pulled into the shopping center and I was absolutely blown away. I had seen these small little company stores that they had, and I saw this behemoth that outpositions the Yard House and everybody else in the center. I was like, what the? Like, I couldn't believe how incredible it was. Went in there, the store was super clean. The staff was friendly, and it was a franchisee store. The food was better than what I remembered. It was probably because of the atmosphere. And I was like, holy, this thing is amazing. So I picked up the phone a couple days later, called the CEO of Red Chickz and congratulated him. And we just started this relationship, and this relationship that we've had for about a year and a half now. And it's been incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that with me, Spencer. So yeah, you and I both had worked with FranSmart. I met Dan a long time ago when I started my career in franchising, and you have a really good background because you come from the culinary side and the operations side, and then getting that education and franchise development, like you can see both perspectives, franchisor, franchisee, operator development, like that's a unique skill set to have. So, and I want to learn a lot about the Red Chickz, and we're going to talk about that today. I just had a quick question about the footprint. So you were saying that the traditional Red Chickz footprint was a little bit smaller, but the franchise owner went out and built this like really massive space. Why do you think that was? I mean, was it just a real estate opportunity? Did they have
Well,
really good connections?
yeah, no, I'll tell you exactly what it was. So just coming out of COVID, there was a chicken brand that was going into this particular concept, and they never opened up. COVID hit, they never opened up, and these
Got it.
guys walked into this center that literally gets 5.4 million visits every year, super well balanced. It's the premier spot with a patio on the side. And it was a very, very inexpensive conversion. Would we do it again if it was from vanilla shell and all that? I don't know. I don't believe so. You're probably talking about $1 million build out. But the fact that they were able to convert that store for, I don't know, right around $150,000 tells you all you need to know.
Yep.
It's an incredible center. Now it's
Yeah.
overbuilt. It's a little too much for what our model fits into. We're probably more of the between 13 and 1600 square feet is kind of our sweet spot. But that store does extraordinarily well, and the franchisee's happy.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thanks for the context. And that's the benefit of being in a franchise is like when you find a really unique and good opportunity, you can pounce on it, even if it's a little bit, strays from the prototypical footprint. If the economics are right and it's positioned well and it's got great visibility and great ingress and egress and co-tenancy, it's like, let's try it out. So
Yeah.
let's let's talk a little bit about the Red Chickz. Like you had a lot of things you can pursue. You chose the Red Chickz. You explained how you kind of saw it and were blown away by it. Tell us a little bit about the brand for anyone that's not familiar with it, and as well as the leadership team, because I think that seems to be what pulled you in.
Yeah. So the brand is great. The reason what I loved about it is extraordinarily scalable. They made it very, very, very simple. And that speaks volume to prospective franchisees. And I like that from an operational standpoint. I've been with brands where we've had 150 SKUs, 150 things on the menu, and this brand has basically one thing and then little categories of what it is. And so when I looked at that simplicity where you're basically focused off giving incredible service and marketing, I was like, this is a brand that you could scale. This is a brand that the food's really good. The guys behind the brand are extraordinarily passionate about what they are doing. And literally their mindset is there to support the franchisees. That's it. And that's what I was looking for. I've been exposed to a lot of franchises. My mentor was John Gallardi, who was the founder of Wiener Schnitzel. And years and years and years ago, he told me, he said, Spencer, once you start franchising, your whole responsibility is no longer corporate. It is now the franchisee. Your whole fiduciary responsibility is to that franchisee. And when I met Sean and Nima and the team and Tony, I really got that. They truly are about the franchisees. And that made me feel good. Remember, I came off a really bad relationship where I brought these people a lot of money. They didn't bring in any of the infrastructure they promised me they would bring in. I certainly wasn't going to do it. And so I was like, I was never going to make that mistake again. So I took my time with these guys and I
Yep.
fully vetted them for probably 4 or 5 months, and every box was checked. And the biggest thing with these guys, which I love the most, was my final question before I started working with them is I said, what are you going to do when the brand becomes too big for you? Because it's going to become too big for you. What does that look like? And I didn't feed them the answer. I just shut up and I just listened. And every single answer they gave me was exactly what you'd want to hear. So that's why I love this brand.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you have a great brand, it's simple, you've got great leadership, all those things kind of can thrust you into a national chain, which I know is the intent. But, there's a lot of Nashville hot chicken franchises out there. It's a red hot, fast casual QR segment. In your view, what makes the Red Chickz stand out in the crowd?
Well, the chicken space has been there forever, and chicken is growing. It's now surpassing beef. And so we're in that segment. Nashville is just a sub little category. At the end of the day, if your food's incredible, your service is amazing, it's in a cool, great atmosphere, fun and friend, you're good. You will survive anything. If you think about, the millions of Hispanic concepts are out there, Mexican restaurants that are out there, there's always room for another one. So that's the fact of it. When people focus on that, I'm like, yeah, maybe you're not in the right space, because that's really, we haven't even started on that segment, is what my view is. But what makes us stand out from the competition is the atmosphere is better. The stores are just the feel of the stores, the music, the food is categorically better. From a franchisee's perspective, they've made it really, really simple. So it's really scalable. If you go to any of our reviews in any of our stores, they're 4.8, 4.9, 5.0. That doesn't happen on accident. They're not all 5.0 operators. I could tell you that right now. We're growing and evolving and things are amazing, but it speaks to the brand. It speaks to how powerful the food is and the thought was behind it. These guys intentionally, when they first developed this brand, they'll tell you at the beginning they wanted nothing to do with franchising, but I think the CEO was smart enough to know, I'm going to make this thing so scalable. When my partners are ready to franchise, we can hit play and go. And that's really what they've done when they created this thing. So
Yeah.
I think the food, the atmosphere, the types of franchisees we bring into the system, which we're very, very strict on, all of those things together really kind of make us stand out from our competition. And we're very, we're not in a rush either. I mean, literally, we're not in a rush. I could have probably signed, I don't know, 200 this year. So we're not in any rush. We're very particular as to who we bring into the organization. We want to make sure we're right for them, but more importantly, I want to make sure they're right for us and for the existing franchisees. Because if you get a bad franchisee in your system, as you know, it destroys the whole enchilada. So we're really, really, really particular in who we bring in for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think the better you vet the new owners on the front end, the healthier the system's going to be. It's going to have a real strong foundation for growth. And frankly, when the new franchisees come in the next phase and the next phase, they look at you and say, who have you selected? You know, how stringent
100%.
have you been about making sure they're properly capitalized, have good business acumen, they're a good cultural fit for the business. So I think for any emerging franchisor, mid-market franchisor, you just got to keep your eye on the ball. It sounds like you guys are all over it, which is great. So tell us about the current footprint. Like, how many stores do you have open and where are they located geographically?
Well, we just opened up our sixth location. We're actually on a military base as well, and down in San Diego. So that one's in Woodland. We're in Fresno, and then we have three in Bakersfield that are under development. We're in Los Angeles. We're in San Diego, and then I think we have 45 stores in development. And it's actually rather quickly. I just started working with these guys back in January, and so we're really starting to ramp up right now.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in a really good spot, and there's
Yeah.
obviously some white space for new owners to come in and kind of lock in some good markets.
Ton of white
So,
space for sure.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, for someone that's kind of contemplating getting into the space, we all know that chicken's huge, but what is the market size for the fast casual restaurant sector, and what are the trends that you're seeing in the space?
Well, I think, as you know, and it's transitioned over here about the last 10 years or so, people want a quality product. Everything is expensive now. I don't care where you eat, it's expensive. So really what, puts us in a unique position is that we know our product is best, that we know that its quality is flavorful. And so the trend is people are they're staying in that segment. They're willing to pay a little bit more, but you better execute, because if you don't, especially now with social media and everything else, you are going to get hammered. So it's continually moving down that road. I think, you know, Chipotle sort of started that whole trend, and then it grew to all these other different brands. And now you have different versions of that brand, but in Mediterranean space with Kava and all this stuff. So that segment is incredibly, I think that has got a ton of white space. There's a long runway with it. And I think you're going to continue to see better and better concepts out there. So really, I think the future of the restaurant industry is, how are we going to make this easier on our customers? How are we going to make things more accessible to our customers without losing that quality? I think the brands that position themselves to take care of their customers, but have made it very convenient for them and don't lose that quality no matter what, I think those brands will survive and actually thrive.
Yeah, makes sense. So if someone's deciding, hey, sounds great, I want to participate in this, but I'm nervous, it's kind of a newer system, it's not a McDonald's, which, a lot of people we talk to, Spencer, they're always like, franchising is McDonald's, Taco Bell, KFC. The
Right.
reality is the majority of brands out there are kind of emerging mid-market brands. What kind of training and support can a new owner expect as it relates to site selection, construction, opening, and beyond, so they can say, okay, if I partner with these guys, they're going to hold my hand through this.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I ended up signing up with these guys, is because it's truly from A to Z. Like before I signed on, I brought the concept of a master broker to do all the real estate. So we've given them the criteria. They find the local broker that specializes in the real estate. He quarterbacks that whole process. We're involved in every single step of the way. The training is amazing with these guys. It's well supported. It's ongoing. The CEO has literally weekly calls with every franchisee to talk about their store, the barometers, and what things are going on. So it was refreshing to learn that. And then as we grow and grow, they've already know the people they're bringing into the organization as we continue to scale. So you get support on every front, from real estate to construction, obviously operations, marketing. I don't know if you've looked at any of our social media, but I believe we have like 1.3 million followers on TikTok with like 39 million views, on our Instagram. We literally beat brands with 40,000 locations. So we're very
It's
good at the
awesome.
marketing end of it. Uh, Operations very good at, at that portion of it as well. But we're growing and we're learning. We don't know everything. We don't come into the mindset that we know everything. Every single opening is a learning experience. Every single franchisee is a learning experience. I can tell you, McDonald's has got a great system. You work for McDonald's for a year before you even qualify for a store. I think that's smart unless you purchase a deal. I think a lot of brands don't really go into um, the necessary training that really what someone needs. I mean, it's a lot of hands-on training is what I think is important. But if you don't, that our biggest thing where we're not going to set up franchisees to fail, we know that we have a concept it's really hard work. I mean, let's face it, the restaurant business is tough work, but they've
Sure.
made it very easy. But if you do not have experience at that, operating a couple of high volume QSR restaurants, or, you know, own and operated a couple high volume restaurants, you have to bring on an operating partner or very, very strong district manager, period. There's not a choice. That's one of our requirements because we know what it's like. And the last thing you want to do is figure that you're going to run this thing. I know a lot of brands that will sell anything to anybody and collect, and then they fail. We will not do that. You have to meet the certain criteria. And we do that for their benefit to really set them up for success. And so we know we have the Ferrari, but we're going to teach you how to drive it, but you got to drive it. You got to drive it with the right leadership and the right people in there. And so that's where I think we really stand out, is that we're very, very diligent in that process of making sure we're picking the right markets, the right franchisees, and that they're really passionate about like what we're doing, but they're passionate in general. I'm sure
Yeah.
with your experience at FranSmart, you've seen people that have come through and, you're talking to them and there's no way you're looking at this individual like they're going to be the leader of this. There's no way. I just don't see it. And so you
Yeah.
pivot.
Yeah, I think you just have to really, scrutinize over the candidate more so in the food space because there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of vendors, employees, customers. You just need to make sure you have the right personality, someone that has great leadership skills, knows how to delegate, knows how to get out of their own way, and has kind of a scaling mindset, not just within the four walls, but like, within the market. So it sounds like you're
100%.
doing a good job of trying to find those folks. So I know you touched on some of this before, but in your view, like where is the Red Chickz going as a brand, and why do you feel it's the next big thing in franchise?
Well, and I've say this all the time to everybody I come across. I think it's the next billion-dollar brand. And I think it's because the food is so good, the economics are so good, it's so scalable. And so, but in that, we're not looking to have 1,000 franchisees by any stretch of the imagination. We want to be able to sit into a conference room with our franchisees and really collaborate and not have to rent out a convention center in Vegas to sit there on a stage. And we don't want to do that. And so in part of that growth process is we're only looking for multi-unit people. We actually have a 3-store minimum and a 3-store maximum, meaning we won't allow you to do 3 stores until we've seen you get up and running and operate. And we know that you're going to be a good operator, and then we'll sell you the rest of the market if you want it. But that's just what we're doing. We're looking at probably the 60 biggest medium markets in the country. We are open to suburbs. If you look at Sacramento and Woodland's a little suburb on the outside of Sacramento, and that store is crushing it. 1,300 square feet, and it is slam, just slam, because we do our due diligence on our real estate. We bring in the right franchise partner. So we're very methodical in this approach. I look at income levels too. If you're not that, $30,000 in per capita income, not average household, but that disposable income category, and you don't have at least 100,000 people within like a 5-mile bubble, we probably are not going to really look at that market and area, because we want to make sure that our franchisees are supported, that the customer base is there. We know that we can attract them in there. They have to go out there and attract them in there. So we're very, very, not overly strict, but we're pretty disciplined when it comes down to where we grow and how we're going to grow and who we're going to bring into the system.
Okay, appreciate that. So you mentioned a little bit about like the economics. I want to get into the item 7. What's it going to cost to open one? Obviously, in a restaurant, there's a huge variance if it's second gen, if it's vanilla shell, gray box, etc. But something that's under 2,000 feet, like what's our range, and where do you see these things landing in terms of the whole kind of startup cost, including working capital?
Well, in item 7, it says anywhere, like all item 7s do, as you know. They give this
Yeah,
broad spectrum. It's $200 to $5 million. No, it's between like, I think it's $420 and $880,000.
Okay.
I could tell you, we tell everybody it's $500,000. We've converted them for $125, but we say it's $500,000 because we're factoring in operating capital, marketing dollars, all of those things. I don't think enough brands do that. They're just looking at, what's it going to cost me to open this up? You're like, well, here's just the construction portion of it, but here's the other big chunk of it, so that you're set up for success. Is you need marketing dollars, training dollars, you need inventory dollars, all of those things. And if you can't float that for a minimum of 6 months, you're set up for failure. That's just the way it is.
And then in terms of item 19, what can you tell us about performance?
Well, I can tell you things like, all of the stores are up like 35%. In this item 19, I think they put their original franchise store in there. They don't have any company stores in this one. And I think it was at like, 146, something like that. But again, I can tell you that.
That's a huge AUV out of, 1,500, 1,800 feet.
No, it's crushing that now, but that's what it was in when that would be a low performing store. But it's a good where AUVs are fantastic, but I can only talk about that 146, as you know.
Yeah, I got you. So then do candidates talk to owners to kind of fill in the blanks in terms of the full P&L?
Yeah, that's part of our process, is that so we do, basically same sort of 8 or 10 step process. After they've done an initial Zoom with the CEO and he feels like at least preliminary, it's going to be the right fit, he connects them with everybody. All of the franchisees, they're usually really cool. All financials, we have them talk to the franchisees, and if they give them their financials, great. And we can't control that, but that's what we do, of course.
Yeah. No, it's like, it's a concept that I know has legs. Like I have 2 teenagers, one's in college, one's in high school, and they're always trying to track down concepts just like this. We don't have the Red Chickz in our area yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing one show up here in the DC market. So Spencer, it's been great. Anything else you want to add to the mix about the brand before we wrap up today?
No, we're super excited. I mean, it's a great time to be involved in this brand. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we are just getting started. We just started in January, really ramping up our franchising efforts, and there's a ton of room for growth in some amazing markets. We have 3 franchisees in New Jersey, a couple in North Carolina, we're in Connecticut, Oklahoma, Texas, all up and down California. And then we have a bunch more right now that are various different levels of our development, or of that process. So, I mean, now's the time to get involved with this brand for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are definitely on your way. If anyone listening would like to connect with Spencer and his team to learn more about becoming a franchise owner with the Red Chickz, contact me at franchiseqb.com or on X at QBFranchiseQB. I'll get you connected. Thank you, Spencer, so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Franchise QB podcast, where you're at the helm of your future as a franchise owner. If you enjoyed the content, please rate the show and recommend it to anyone that might be interested in franchising. Make sure to visit franchiseqb.com to subscribe to my newsletter and for an actionable playbook to go from walk-on to legend in your new business. Follow us on Twitter at QBFranchiseQB and join us every week for a new episode. See you next time.
Visit franchiseqb.com to take the next step of your journey towards wealth, independence, and franchise ownership. And remember, when working for the man gets old, you must do something bold. Thank you for listening.